What's going on YouTube? It's Alan Bingham, aka Sax-bit, and today I have a bit of a dual purpose video for you guys. I want to do both a deck mat reveal and an updated deck profile because I haven't done a deck profile in well over a year and lots of things have changed. So first off, with the deck mat reveal, here it is. This came from yourplaymat.com. They do extremely good work. It's a great quality playmat. Like, it feels really nice. It's got a good durability to it. But then also, if you can tell on the edges, it has some really good high quality stitching. So that means that it's going to hold up and not fray, at least not as badly. Now, I will say the stitching does cost extra. It's not freely thrown in there, but I think it's only maybe like $5 to $8 extra to do it. So anyway, I really like this. Of course, I had to have Necro Valley in the background, and then Thunder King Ryo and Yata-Garasu. Yata-Garasu being my favorite hand disruption card of all time, and as far as old school hand disruption goes, he's basically the only one that's viable in today's modern game. And then Thunder King Ryo, it just occurred to me the other day that I have had this guy in every iteration of my deck since his release in 2008 in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX manga. So I would say that warrants a place on a custom playmat. Also, you can tell that there are monster zones and spell and trap zones and everything, but they're very, very faint. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. Part of me wanted something a little more distinct, but the other part of me is like, well, it's kind of nice to not distract from the picture. So I don't know. I've got mixed feelings. I think overall, though, I probably would have liked something a little more distinct. So it's about my only complaint. But outside of that, though, it's a fantastic mat. I love this, and I really look forward to actually being able to use it. Anyway, so on the deck profile, though. So starting off, we have 3 copies of Eniacraft Asta Pixia. I won't go into a lot of details about this, but this has been kind of the hot new tech in the anti-meta community. He basically he protects you from targeting. Like I said, I won't go into too many details, but if you're not already familiar with the card, look it up. Out of all the Eniacraft cards, I do believe that this is the most powerful one and the most splashable in a deck like Anti-Meta Stun. So anyway, great card. Probably the deck's best floodgate currently. Of course, a couple of copies of Thunder King Ryo. Got my nice Turbo Pack Ultimate Rare. Thing looks beautiful. But Thunder King is actually pretty good in today's meta right now. It's specifically against the Radiant Typhoon deck. As long as you can keep him on the field, he's going to keep them from searching for their stuff. Now, granted, they do tend to run things like Imperm and Forbidden Droplet and stuff like that, but sometimes you just can't get around that. But as long as he's on the field and functional, he's really good. So, and of course, he's a 4-star 1900 beater, and he can negate an inherent special summon. Then I got a couple of copies of Gravekeeper's Commandant. Once again, got the ulti first eds right here from the original Force of the Breakers set. But yeah, this guy, kind of actually a triple purpose. Number one, it's another set of legs if I already have Necro Valley out, because he gets the 500 attack boost, so he becomes a 2100 attacker under Necro Valley. Number two, he can just simply fetch me Necro Valley if I don't have it. And number three, he sometimes ends up being Ash Blossom bait. I'll be real with you guys, a lot of times when I open with Necro Valley, and I open with him as well, I will still discard him to attempt to search for a Necro Valley just to try to bait out an Ash Blossom, because why not? He doesn't do that much good as a monster, but if I can bait out an Ash Blossom so that I can successfully get off an Adir Servant or something like that, that's really good. So anyway, great card. I finally got into running the whole Dogmatica package, so I'm running a couple of copies of Ecclesia with the beautiful looking QCR rarity here. But yeah, pretty standard in these days in anti-meta stun, so if you guys don't know why the card's good, just look into it. And then lastly, Tried and true Yata-Garasu. I will say Yata has not been as effective for me as he was, well, over a year ago when I was playing before I took my hiatus, and when I had Fossil Dyna to pair with him, because Fossil Dyna plus a Moon Mirror Shield plus Yata a lot of times ended up being game. Like it was pretty much an immediate lock. It's a lot harder to lock people. That's why I'm only running the lone copy now as opposed to 2 copies. By the way, this is Starlight rarity, so really pretty. But anyway, it is what it is. So yeah, that is all of the monsters. So on to the spell and traps. So Card of Demise, Pot of Prosperity, and then 2 copies of Nadir Servant. I think all these are pretty self-explanatory. And 3 copies of Decisive Battle of Golgonda, more of the Dogmatica package, and with the demise of Solemn Judgment, going down to 1 per deck, we need as much protection from destruction as we possibly can. So this is a very, very valuable card. I really, really, really wish that it would come out in a higher rarity than common, but, it is what it is. Hopefully one of these days we'll get a shiny version, because we got a shiny version of Moon Mirror Shield finally, so that was pretty cool. 3 copies of Necro Valley. And, depending on the format, I've bounced back and forth between 2 copies and 3 copies. And right now, especially without Fossil Dyna being legal, this card is so very important. So not only am I running the 3 copies, but I'm also running a couple of copies of Commandant and a couple of other copies of a card we'll get to when we get to the traps. And then the 1 lone copy of Moon Mirror Shield. I used to run 2 copies of this and 2 copies of Clockwork Knight, but to be honest, all of those cards are a lot less useful without Fossil Dyna. Because right now, I don't care as much about putting this on an Ecclesia or putting it on a Thunder King or a Pixia or anything like that. But it is nice to have the 1 just in case, sometimes when you run into a monster that's not affected by other cards' effects. But for the most part, though, I think it's most useful as a 1-of. And then 3 copies of Super Poly. I'm so happy to see that this card caught on during my hiatus, because a lot of people in the anti-meta community thought it was a little weird that I was running this before, and then surely enough, I took a year-long hiatus, and now everybody's running it. So I'd like to think that I'm kind of a pioneer in that regard, but if not, it is what it is. But I love the flexibility of it because it works well going first or second. It actually works better going first than it used to, because sometimes if I had it set while I had a Fossil Dyna, it's not really protecting the Fossil Dyna unless they imperm. So now, without any anti-special summoning monsters, this becomes a really good going first card, in addition to being an amazing going second card. And then, of course, the other hot new thing that came out during my hiatus, the Fallen and the Virtuous. Once again, a great going first or going second card. So it can really help break some boards, or it can protect your monsters. It can interrupt a lot of things. I mean, it's such a great card in so many ways. And of course, it's part of the almighty Dogmatica package. But that is it for the spells. Now on to the traps. I told you that there were a couple of trap cards that were relevant to Necro Valley. This is my newest edition that literally just came in the mail today, actually, but I've been running it for about a week now. I noticed last week I played at locals for the first time in over a year, and I did terribly. I went X4, and one of the things I noticed is Necro Valley was just, being popped too many times. And, of course, I've got Pixia to help, I've got Golgonda to help, but sometimes you don't draw Pixia or Golgonda, and sometimes you just have a very vulnerable Necro Valley. And then also on top of that, you've got cards like Sky Striker Ace Zero, which does not even care about targeting because it does not target. And Zero is a menace, an absolute menace. So anyway, I decided to pop Metaverse in there because of the replaceability. I mean, yes, it helps me get to Necro Valley quicker if I don't open Necro Valley. But the big thing is, like, I love having a Necro Valley out and then having one of these set because I know that as soon as somebody does something to pop my Necro Valley, I can do an immediate replacement with Metaverse, assuming they don't have an Ash Blossom, of course. And that's another thing too. It can also be Ash Blossom bait, just like Gravekeeper's Command does. So anyway, I was main decking 2 copies of Evenly Matched. It's pretty standard to main deck 3 copies for stun, but I've always kind of been an outlier in the community. I've never really liked the idea of main decking it because I think that it's just such a poor card if you win the die roll. And you definitely don't want to open up with multiple copies. And the fact is, I kind of feel like there's enough board breaking potential in the main deck anyway that you don't really need Evenly Matched until the side deck. So anyway, so I removed my 2 copies of Evenly Matched, put these in there. Also, I was running 1 copy of Clockwork Knight, and I added another card for that, which I'll get to in a minute. But anyway, so then after that, we've got just all kinds of floodgates. Skill Drain, there can be only one. Obviously, these two have been a mainstay for a while, but then Gozen Match and Rivalry of Warlords, I never really thought that those were all that great in Stun before, but now, like, with the meta being as varied as it is, sometimes there can be only one doesn't cut it. Like sometimes they've got a variety of monsters, and so rivalry helps with that. Gozen is really good because not all decks lock into the one attribute, and even some that do will have extra deck monsters that don't. Like for instance, a deck running the Yummy engine, you think, okay, they're predominantly doing light, but then they can still go into an SP Little Knight, and so you can prevent them from doing that with this. So anyway, I think running the trio is really good, and you can always adjust this during side decking. Maybe typically in every matchup, one of these 3 is going to be dead, but one will be super useful, one will be pretty useful, and the other will be completely dead. And but once again, it's only one dead card, so you can always transition during side decking and keep the ones that are the most useful in there. But anyway, so got all of those floodgates. You got 1 Solemn Judgment. Got the cool Ghost Rare. Which, by the way, I wasn't even talking about the rarities with these. All of these are QCR, except I've got a Collector's Rare for there can be only one. So anyway. And then the 2 copies of Metaverse are the Speed Duel Secret Rare versions. But yeah, I've got a Ghost Rare Solemn Judgment. I used to run a first edition Metal Raiders version, which is the most monetarily valuable, but man, ultra rares are so boring. So I've still got it in my binder, but I just thought the Ghost Rare version would be cooler because look at it. It looks awesome. Anyway, so now I have 1, 2, 3 copies of Solemn Strike, a couple of QCRs, and 1 Collector's Rare. I actually have another QCR in the mail, so that'll have all 3 matching. I was only running 2 copies of it, but remember I told you that I was running 1 copy of Clockwork Knight? Well, once again, because of cards like Sky Striker Ace Zero, I was like, I should probably have a 3rd copy of Solemn Strike in there. So anyway, so I run 3 copies now. And then, of course, got 3 copies of Dogmatic of Punishment. Like that has been a mainstay for a while, although I have seen some people that have been dropping this down to 2 just because of the variety of other cards we need in our deck. But I still like 3 copies, and it works well for me. So anyway, that is the remainder of the main deck. Let's go into the side deck for a second. And by the way, I do plan to do a side decking video. That was a request a while back. And I've decided I'm not going to do it with my IRL cards. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it online, either pulling up Dueling Book or Dueling Nexus or something like that, and I'll just hop on webcam because it's a little bit easier and quicker to show what I swap out for what matchups. So that's a video to come. Anyway, in the side deck, I have a lone copy of Sphere Mode, Ghost Rare, of course. This looks really cool. And I know it's a little more situational than something more generic like Raigeki or super flexible like Lightning Storm. But like I was mentioning before with Moon Mirror Shield, sometimes you run into monsters that have protection, or that are not protection, but are simply not affected by other card effects. And so you either have to be able to kaiju them off the field, which effectively is what this is doing, or or attack over them, which Moon Mirror Shield helps with. So anyway, I've got the one copy of Sphere Mode. I'm running a couple of copies of Raigeki. Got the cool Starlight Rare alternate art. I was running the alternate art secret rare ones, but then during my hiatus the Starlight Rare ones came out, so I was like, that's pretty awesome. So anyway, a couple of those. Got Harpy's Feather Duster, of course, and this is the Starlight. Actually, no, is it a Starlight? No, this is a QCR. Sorry, the QCR that came out of the video game, and the alternate art. One lone copy of Ultimate Slayer. I was running two copies, but once I took Evenly Matched out of the main deck and put it in the side, I needed extra side deck slots. So I actually dropped one of my 3 Raigekis and one of my 2 copies of Ultimate Slayer. But I've liked the Ultimate Slayer ever since it came out. I like the fact that your opponent can't respond to it with monster effects. So, and also this QCR is really pretty. So I considered getting a Starlight Rare version, but I really just like the look of QCRs better, even if in most cases the Starlights are worth more money. And then, of course, 3 copies of Evenly Matched. Like I said, 2 of these used to be in the main deck, but now it's just all inside. As it's pretty self-explanatory of how great of a going second card this is. And then newly added are a couple of copies of Mistake, just backup for Thunder King Ryo. He does a lot of the heavy lifting as far as anti-searching is concerned, but once again, if they end up popping him with, with some kind of monster removal or monster negation, then Mistake is a great backup for that. And this is a card that a lot of people in the community have been side decking. Most people actually side deck 3, but I kind of don't need to because of main decking the Thunder Kings already. And then 3 copies of Non-Fusion Area. This is strictly, well, not strictly for, but mainly for Draco Tail decks. I hate Draco Tail. Every time that they fusion something bad happens. It's absolutely terrible. So the sooner that I can get one of these on the field to say no to fusion summoning, the better. But it also works well against just regular branded decks. But once again, the main reasoning for it is specifically Draco Tail. It's a lot more imperative against that. And then lastly, at the very end of our side deck is Ancient Organism. Got the cool looking QCR with this. But yeah, basically same kind of deal. Like this is going to be good against branded. This is going to be good against Draco Tail. It's actually really good against other decks like Elf Notes and everything. It's a pretty flexible card. Just make sure that your opponent isn't primarily Xyz summoning or Link summoning. Like you need to put this in against decks that specifically have special summoned level 6 or higher monsters. So, but yeah, the fact that it shuts off their ability to activate effects and it prevents them from attacking. Oh man, like against Blue Eyes specifically, this is so good. So good against Blue Eyes. So anyway, definitely very good side deck choice for sure. And lastly, we have the extra deck. So, and a lot of this is pretty standard, but I'll still go through it anyway. So, a couple of copies of Elder Entity Natis. That's been a mainstay for a long time, ever since Dogmatic Punishment became popular. Like this, just the 2-for-1 factor that you can get for it. A couple of copies of Garura, probably the most multi-purpose card in my entire extra deck. because it works for Ultimate Slayer. It's good to pitch for Nadir Servant. It's super poly fodder, like in Dogmatic Punishment fodder. Like it's such a fantastic flexible card, and it can put in some pretty big damage. If you manage to super poly this out, I mean, he's going to be doing that double damage. He'll be doing 3,000 damage instead of 1,500. So that's definitely pretty nice. And then more Super Poly fodder. Got one copy of Mud Dragon. One copy of Planet Trifia Verdum. I specifically like this better than Starving Venom Dragon. Not only do you get the cool Thunder King effect of negating one inherent special summon, and you don't even have to tribute him to do it, but also the fact that you can super poly like you can eat up an entire field of darks because he requires 3 darks for materials rather than 2 like Starving Venom. The way I see it, if my opponent only has 2 darks on the field, I can make either a Garura or a Mud Dragon. So why not have the blowout card thrown in there just for an extra option? And then the last of the Super Poly fodder is Secretarian Dragon. This is good against branded and Draco Tail variants, and a handful of other decks too. Actually, he's pretty good against Blue Eyes too. But being able to fuse a dragon and a spellcaster, I mean, it's definitely pretty nice. So I like Secretarian Dragon. He's a more recent recent addition. And by the way, once again, rarities. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but QCRs for everything except for Trifia Verdum, and then Secretarian Dragon is actually Starlight first ed, so pretty nice. Then I have another Starlight, the Dragon that Devours the Dogma, really beautiful Starlight rare. It's part of the Dogmatica package. It can search for any Dogmatica related card and add it to your hand if it's been sent to the graveyard. It's also pretty nice Super Poly fodder if you're specifically going up against a branded deck. I make this card quite a bit. It's kind of nice making a 3,500 beater that is not affected by other cards' effects. But then a couple of copies of Tentaclad to either, this goes to the grave, I'm going to either add an Ecclesia or special summon an Ecclesia. 2 copies of Albion. Albion, of course, is primarily going to be used just to set a, if it goes to the graveyard, I'm going to be setting a Fallen in the Virtuous. And then I've got Enigmaster Packbit. This guy, I like him better than Malong. It seems like most anti-meta extra decks that have at least one synchro in there usually run Malong. And don't get me wrong, I like Malong, especially with Ultimate Slayer. It's kind of nice to have a 2-for-1 factor with it as opposed to a 2-for-2 factor like you have with this guy. But the problem with Malong is you send a couple of extra deck monsters back to the extra deck. Once again, if you're using Ultimate Slayer, or if you're using Dogmatic Punishment, you would just be sending one. But yeah, you send a monster back to the extra deck, and then they can just kind of resummon it. We don't have Fossil Dyna to back things up anymore, and so our opponent's ability to resummon things from the extra deck is a lot higher than it used to be. But I've got to say, Packbit is great because if you can put one of your opponent's cards in their spell and trap zone, that is absolutely fantastic, because what are they going to do with it? Unless it's a Snake Eyes deck, and you don't see Snake Eyes anymore because the deck is crippled. So basically, most of the viable decks right now cannot make any use out of a monster card that's in their spell and trap zone. And it's even better if you're going up against a pendulum-based deck like Eniacraft, for instance. If you can get one of those put in one of the pendulum zones, you have them locked. Completely locked down. So anyway, I really like Packbit. It does kind of suck to have to discard a card for his effect, but once again, if you're using something like Ultimate Slayer or even Dogmatic Punishment and pitching this to the graveyard, I mean, it's still going to be a 2-for-2. So yeah, you may be discarding a card, but you're not necessarily worse off with card advantage. So I highly recommend this instead of Malong, personally. Also, beautiful looking QCR. Absolutely gorgeous. And then here are the last two. Super Star Slayer Typhon, and then Bucephalus the second. So let's go ahead and do Bucephalus first. I mean, basically this guy's only purpose is, number one, he's got a really high attack, 3,500. So he's good dogmatic punishment fodder. And he can send a winged beast to the graveyard, so I send Garura. So basically I can destroy anything that's, 3,500 or less with a dogmatic punishment. Or if I use Ultimate Slayer, I can target a linked monster because of him. And then when he goes to the graveyard, I send Garura to the graveyard. And when Garura goes to the graveyard, I draw a card. So it's pretty nice. Also, you can send the Dragon that Devours Dogma as well. But I have so many other ways of getting him into the graveyard that I usually don't bother. I'd rather send Garura off of his effect. But this is an option at least. And lastly, you've got Typhon. This card is one of our saving graces as far as breaking boards is concerned. It's amazing that sometimes I can be staring down a field full of really nasty monsters, and I can simply summon a Yata-Garasu and then attach Yata-Garasu to him as material. Literally the only bad thing about this card to me is its rarity, because I only have the secret rare version. I want to get a QCR of this. No, actually, there's some other disadvantages. I mean, the fact that you can't summon anymore after you've summoned him. You can still set monsters, but I don't know. You got to get a little creative with him sometimes, but overall, though, he is definitely worth having in there. And at the very least, he's Ultimate Slayer fodder, too, because him being an Xyz. So if you're going up against a deck that has a lot of crazy Xyz monsters, then he's your guy. So anyway, but that is it for the deck profile, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been informative. Like I said, I do plan to release a side decking video, specifically just using an online deck profile that I have on either Dueling Book or Dueling Nexus. I think it's easier to show the side decking swap outs. So yeah, look forward to that video to come. But that is it for this video. So until next time, stay Saxy.